whoever the fuck you name on the planet Earth was at that funeral. Like Lauryn Hill, Mary, whoever on Earth. And I remember when I walked in there, like, people started crying, hugging me and shit, like, because they knew my relationship with him.
Well, of course, LL was there, and,
Nick Cannon. Chris used to manage Nick.
50 was there. Puffy was there.
So many people. My brother was well loved. So many people.
All these people were gathered at the Frank E. Campbell Funeral Chapel in Manhattan. That's the same place where funerals for stars like Aaliyah, Luther Vandross, and the Notorious B.I.G. were held. If you were on the street outside that day, you might have thought this was a red carpet event. Celebrities stepping out of SUVs with blacked out windows. Paparazzi were there too, looking for a spot to take the perfect shot. Bodyguards did their best to hold them back. But inside there was no award show, no new album dropping, just a casket holding the body of a man named Chris Lighty, who just a few days earlier had shocked the world.
The medical examiner has ruled the death of hip-hop mogul Chris Lighty is a suicide. Lighty was found with a gunshot wound to the head at his Bronx home on Thursday. Police say they found a black handgun at the scene, but no note. The 44-year-old worked with some of rap and R&B's biggest stars, including New York acts LL Cool J, Mariah Carey, Sean Diddy Combs, and 50 Cent.
Chris also worked with Busta Rhymes, Missy Elliott, Foxy Brown, Q-Tip. He signed some of the biggest endorsement deals in the history of hip-hop. This guy was a king and a kingmaker, which is why no one saw this coming. Powerful black men like Chris Lighty do not shoot themselves. It makes no sense. Not when he fought and thought his way out of the hood. Not when he beat the odds and didn't end up in jail. And certainly not when he achieved so much, contributed so much to the culture, and made so much damn money along the way. But somehow, there he was, lying in a casket with a bullet through his skull. Here's Chris's mom, Jessica, reading the eulogy she wrote for her son.
My son was the eldest of 6 children, born in the Bronx, New York. From a very young age, he was encouraged to be independent, dependable, loyal, and true to his family and friends. He lived that way throughout his short but eventful life. He leaves a legacy that his children can cherish and use as a benchmark in defining what makes a person successful in life. It was not the fame, the material possessions, nor even the love of a career he enjoyed every day of his adult life. It was much deeper than that. My son was a lover of God, family, friends, and life itself. And as we all do along life's journey, he made some wrong turns, but he never wavered in that love. Sleep well, my son. We all love you so much.
From Gimlet Media and the Loudspeakers Network, I'm Reggie Osei, and this is Mogul, the life and death of Chris Lighty. Yo, Internet, you're listening to the Combat Jack Show podcast. I'm your host, Combat Jack. What's up, A-King?
What's going on, big fella?
Man, this is a special episode. I mean, we've never done anything like this. Usually, we spend the entire entity of the episode promoting other people's projects or promoting other people or promoting events and this and that, but we never use this to promote something that we ourselves have been involved in. Yep. But, Internet, you just heard the first five or so minutes of a clip of the show Mogul, the life and death of Chris Lighty. And I've been kind of harassing y'all and bothering y'all for the past year about, how amazing this project is going to be. And now it's out, man. And it's out on iTunes. It's out on SoundCloud. It's on Spotify. It's everywhere. And, we really wanted to just have a special episode where we talked about the process, putting this thing together, the ups and downs of it and how it's here now. But this should be celebrated. We have, somebody else in the studio. King, you want to introduce this guy, man?
The Grand Chief Architecture of the Loudspeakers Network?
Yes.
Mr. Chris Morrow.
What's up, Chris Morrow?
Hey, how's everybody doing?
How are you, man? You sound so energetic and
I've been dealing, I just shut my laptop because I've been dealing with some nonsense with a travel site.
Really?
Yeah, trying to get some loudspeakers talent to Essence Festival. There's a travel site. I'm not going to name them now. We'll see. Maybe by the end of the episode, we'll
yeah, man, F this, man.
We'll suggest you don't send them your business. So they've got me a little distracted, but now I'm focused.
Yeah, Chris, man, you were part of this process from like day one, man. Well, actually, you know what? Let's introduce somebody else that's in the studio that's not necessarily a part of the LSN team. They're part of the Gimlet media team, but I guess in this process, we've been fighting behind enemy lines together. Let's introduce this guy, man.
Who?
This guy.
No, who's going to introduce him?
King.
Okay.
What's going on, King?
He's the Gimlet beer god himself, producer extraordinaire. Fat Pants. What's it? IG?
Matty Fat Pants.
I'm trying to get
Fat Pants 83 on IG. Matty Fat Pants on Twitter.
Yes.
Don't ask where those names come from.
We call him Matthew.
Matt Nelson. What's going on, sir?
Hey guys.
Welcome to the Combat Jack Show.
Hey, it's truly is an honor to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's weird for you because like you used to listen to the Combat Jack Show from Scotland, right?
Well, not from Scotland.
Okay.
I listened to it when
from
I came
England.
Yeah, but
from Japan. No, I'm sorry.
that from the US of A. But yeah, I read about your show in The Guardian, a British newspaper,
right?
And they just said like this thing is amazing. And I remember checking out some. I think it was your best 2014 with like D Nice,
yes,
Ice-T, Russell Simmons.
Right, that was a banner year.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much.
And
cool.
So let's start this thing, man. I'm so unprepared today, man. I don't have any notes. You know how I am, King, with the notes.
I think this one you don't. I think this was more. This is us. You know what I mean? This is the. Well, you can't prepare for this.
I can't, right? I could have some.
We could just.
Or you could.
Chris, man, what are your recollections of how this thing, like the germination of this project, man?
I mean, it's going back probably over 3 years at this point. So it's a little fuzzy, but I mean, basically, as I remember, you told me that Alex Bloomberg, who's the co-founder of Gimlet, very important person in podcasting for those of you out there who aren't familiar with Gimlet, has made a startup, and also a rich history before that with, I guess, Planet Money and all that. So
Planet Money, This American Life.
This American Life. Really super, well-respected guy in the space. Guy that I had always looked up to and kind of admired what he was doing. You told me that he'd actually reached out to you and said that he was a fan of the Combat Jack Show.
Which is bugged out,
Which was bugged out. And that, he'd be interested in collaborating.
Well, no. He just reached out and said he wanted to meet.
Oh, okay.
But I think we're jumping the gun because I think you and I had conversations at least 2 or 3 years before about doing different types of podcasts than the ones that we traditionally have done on the loudspeakers.
Oh yeah, I mean for a long time, I have definitely, and I think us collectively have wanted to figure out a way to expand what we've been doing. And we've talked about this a lot in interviews lately, but I think it bears repeating. I think we did a really good job initially of carving out a new space in podcasting,
right? With
kind of like a raw style and a different voice and bringing different voices to the table and giving them a platform. But at a certain time, and this was obvious to me even a couple of years ago, we were going to have to expand what we do in terms of the production quality and time, in terms of the type of stories we were telling, in terms of how we told them. And, the kind of example I've been using and talking to people recently is I said, when we started this, it was to provide an alternative to the NPR voice or whatever you want to call that, that kind of white guy up. Do you call it up talk? You know the voice.
Yeah, up talk.
Right, but you want to jump high. But whatever it was, we had to provide an alternative. Yeah, we've been doing that for a while too. But now that we did that, I've always also thought There's a lot of really fucking incredible shit that they have done in that space and how they've told stories and the production value and what have you. So, this is something, I think we've always wanted to do, but it's something that's really difficult to do.
It's fucking difficult.
And we knew that before we started. We really know it now, but we knew it was something that truthfully we probably weren't going to be able to figure out on our own, at least not anytime soon.
Right.
So I think when the word came out that Bloomberg was interested in talking to us about some ideas, I think it was something we were both real excited about. I mean, I remember we put together, I think, about 10 sample story ideas. I won't say what they are because I'd still like to do most of them.
And there's a lot of people out there
someday
waiting
I'm not
to
make
jack
it easy for
our
you guys.
ideas.
Talk about it.
Swagger jackers.
For you guys. But we put together 10, and this is when Gimlet was at that other location on Flatbush.
Right.
And we had a meeting, and it was raining, and I remember we both got lost, and like you ended up down at like the base of the Manhattan Bridge.
Yeah, I was about a bad bridge.
I was like wandering the wrong way on Nevin Street or something. So like, we basically gave them a good taste of what it was going to be with us. Like, we're going to wander into this meeting late. We don't know what the fuck is going on, but here you go. We got some good ideas.
Now, I remember we had, I don't remember. I got to go back onto my laptop and look at some of the other ideas that we discussed, but the whole Chris Lighty thing, like you were focused on that, like initially, like that was one of your initial ideas.
Yeah. And, truthfully, it's not because I knew that much about the story. It was really just because Lighty's name was something I had been hearing, really since listening to Tribe albums, what would Chris
Jungle
be if
Brothers.
he wasn't such a baby,
Right.
De La Soul, I'd Be Blown, like all these songs, you hear this guy, his name called out. And then, over the years, you realize he's this guy with this prominence in the industry, but I never really knew why.
Right.
I just knew that he was, and I think, I was probably in a couple of rooms with him. I might have even had some mutual friends with him, but I never met him, certainly one-on-one. And I never really knew exactly what he did. So there's always this mystery about him that kind of was interesting to me to start with. And then when he passed in the way that which he passed, then I was like, the mystery just doubled.
Right.
So in some ways, yeah, I pitched it and I was heavily in favor of, but I didn't really have much more than just that.
Right.
Just like the sense of mystery and all right, something's going on here. And here's a guy who obviously touched a lot of lives. Here's a guy who obviously was a guiding hand behind a lot of incredible music. I knew that much. I knew that, the Vitamin Water deal. I knew like kind of the big basic kind of moments in his career, but I didn't certainly have any sense of who he was as a man or kind of some of the things he was facing. I mean,
Right.
Obviously, when someone passes in the way that he passed, that everything can't be rosy, but I didn't have any idea of the depth of what was going on. So I think probably, that was one of the struggles for us is we were the ones who pitched this idea like, hey, this is going to be a great story, but we kind of walked in blind ourselves.
Right. It's kind of crazy, man, because, I knew Lighty in the industry and I had done a couple of deals with him. And, the thing that people keep saying throughout this, throughout our entire process of putting this show together is that, he was this great guy. He was this loyal guy. He was this fearless guy. But at the same time, you really didn't know who he was. And I could just attest personally, like, I've been in the room with Lighty. I think I hung out with Lighty one time. Like, we went out to this party. Like, we were out for a couple of hours. And then I just remember, like, and of course, hindsight is 20/20. But afterwards, I remember just saying, like, I don't know what that guy was thinking. Like, cause, he just always this poker face, not really expressive, just letting you know enough of what he wanted you to know, man. So, it's interesting that we come up with this story, and the deeper we go in, the more of an enigma he is. You know what I'm saying? It's like, who the fuck was this guy? Matt, Matt, how did you get pulled onto this, man?
I just randomly got dropped into it.
Right.
I'm a sort of development producer here at Gimlet, so I help out across a lot of projects. And they were just like, there's a story about hip hop culture. Let's get this white guy from Scotland who probably knows the least about hip hop in all of fucking Gimlet. Let's put him on this. And I sort of kind of fell down the rabbit hole, and I don't know, I had listened to a bit of hip hop music. We do have that in Scotland, but I just kind of fell in love with this world. And I think for me, one of the great strengths about the story is that it's not just about Lighty, it's about the genesis of hip hop.
Right.
It's about what it was like to be in the Bronx in the 70s, what it was like to be a young black man, in particular in the Bronx in the 70s, and this whole kind of like burgeoning art movement and how it sort of like gradually spreads across America. And Lighty's a road manager and he's taking these acts out, you know, across the country. And then as hip hop goes global, he's there for that too. So yeah, I just kind of like fell in love with the story. Fell in love with you guys as well, who are really fun to hang out with.
What's up, Mena?
Well, hold on. Let's take it back a second, though. So you're the Scottish guy at Gimlet.
Right.
Right. And they say, all right, we got a new assignment for you.
Yeah.
What'd you think when they brought this story to you?
I mean, obviously the first thing you do is you go into Google and you look at the Wikipedia page and you're just like, oh, he worked with some of the biggest names. And that in itself is interesting. And then you see how his life ended and that there's a lot of contention around the circumstances in which he died. So I was like, okay, you know, we have some of the key ingredients here for what could be a really, really interesting story. And then, like you guys, like the further we got into it, is almost like the less I knew about him. We spoke to so many people. I don't know how many interviews we did, between 50 and 100.
Jesus.
Something like that.
Jesus.
So many. And the sense that I got was that he was this sort of blank canvas, and people projected kind of whatever they wanted to see about him. Like, some people would tell you that he was kind of like solemn and stern. Some people would tell you that he's a joker and is a real fun guy. Some people would say that he's like incredibly affectionate, and then some people would say the opposite. We just heard so many things about him, and I don't know, like at the end of the 6-part series, I was like, do we know who he was? And I suppose maybe the answer is no, but maybe we're all really complex, you know, people, and perhaps that's what
some more so than others, though. Some more so than others. I think.
Some more so than others.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's so deeply fascinating, and it's a real gift to get to do this project with you guys.
Thank you, man. You know, I'm kind of shell shocked because it was so intense that I don't even know how did we put this. Like, how did we put this narrative together? Like, how did we start?
Well, that's what I was going to ask Matt, because
weaving this thing, man.
When you got the call that, all right, we're going to do this podcast about Lighty's life, what other shows out there were you thinking of in terms of this sort of narrative podcast that, you know, would be similar?
Yeah. So there were a few sources of inspiration for me. One was the incredible O.J. Simpson doc on ESPN. And the reason that I loved that so much and was so kind of influenced by that was because it didn't just look at OJ, it looked at the entire kind of like social context around him. And I thought that was something we should do with this story. Like, we should take Lighty, but we need to talk about the Bronx. We need to talk about like hip hop, where it came from and why it came into being. I was massively influenced by that. And also the great Iggy Pop narrated documentary, Burroughs at 100. You can find that on This American Life, which is a great sort of like, you know, overview of an artist's life, which I suppose we were doing something similar with Lighty, but it had this real strong presence of Iggy Pop, the narrator. He wasn't just sort of like reading a script. He's very much invested and involved in the story. And you, Reggie, like, this is, as much as this is like Chris Lighty's tale, like it's your tale too. You were there for a lot of this stuff. So I knew that kind of when we embarked on this, like, you had to be more than just like a guy reading the script. Like, you had to be in the story. And there's so many like beautiful moments, like in episode 1, when you're talking about like the importance of sneakers and stuff, that where you really connect with the subject and you're like such like a big part of it. Does that am I doing what you want me to do?
I'm making a mental note to go check out William Burroughs.
William is called him. Burroughs at 100. Yeah.
You know, but like one of the things I'm like, and I think maybe this is probably where Morrow's coming from, is that, you know, we're doing all these interviews and we have all of this source material, but then we actually have to weave this narrative. We have to like, what's that process like? Like, cause you guys did a lot of the weaving of the, I mean, you wrote a lot of this narrative, like what's that process like?
Yeah, so what it is you sit down, you do the interview with, say, whoever it is. Let's say, for example, like Fat Joe.
Right.
And maybe you get like, say, total 10 or 15 minutes of Fat Joe in the entire series. But we spoke to him for like, you know, 2 hours in total. So you take that interview and you sort of like, you isolate like the best moments, the sort of the most compelling, insightful, illuminating stories about Lighty, and you pull those moments out, and you do that for sort of every interview that you have. And you have these like these key sort of source anecdotes, and you start to shuffle them around, and you figure out, okay, maybe this will go in this episode. Maybe we're going to do an episode that will be themed around kind of like Lighty's like great signings and the kind of moments where he like got key acts and stuff. And you'll start to group things together, and then you'll start to sort of like see like a narrative arc and a through line, and how you get from the beginning, which in our cases people have just heard is him being dead, and then how you go kind of, you step back and you take his childhood and you work through the
phases
process
of his life.
Yeah, the phases of his existence and his life. And you sort of say, okay, like that story Warren G tells, that's going to fit into kind of the episode which is going to be about Lighty's great successes and him discovering Warren G and, you know, Regulate blowing up and becoming massive. That's going to go in there. And then you get sort of other stories about maybe things not going so well for him. And you're like, maybe that will go in episode 4 or 5 when things are starting to take a turn for the worse. So yeah, it's basically just a case of like, you take the material, you look for the best bits, the funniest bits, the most interesting bits, the bits that people want to hear. And you just take those moments and you just sort of line them up and say, okay, this is our story. This is how we get from A to B.
You know what's crazy though, is that, you know, as much as we put into this story, there's so much. There's hours and hours and hours of content that we weren't able to put into this story. I mean, you know, of course I know that you guys here are really careful about, you know, locking into stories that, you know, you can fact check and prove. But we've heard some amazing stories that even if we couldn't fact check them, would just, you know, I felt would like add to just like the heightened sense of entertainment with regard to Lighty's life. Like we had this one interview where we heard at some point in his life he was kidnapped by this major kingpin from Harlem. And I was like, yo, that shit is hot. How, you know, and it's, but like, how do we like, I understand you just answered the question, but still when you hear something like that, when you hear like at an early age, Chris Lighty was allegedly kidnapped by a Harlem drug kingpin. Yeah. How do we not put that in, man?
It's called lawyers.
Is it what it's called?
Exactly.
Is that what it's called? It's like protecting.
Chris just answered the question. Perfectly.
We operate a little bit looser over at Loudspeakers. Yeah, we can talk about that story on this platform.
Yeah,
Gimlet's.
We don't have lawyers on retainer.
Gimlet's a little more buttoned up, I think.
Yeah,
that story was just like. It was a great story, and you know, you paint the picture in your head, and now you've just teased your audience, and they're probably all going to want to hear that story now. But I'm sorry you can't, because it's impossible to verify it.
Allegedly.
It's all like alleged.
Right.
Like there was no way to sort of fact check it or verify it, and yeah, I don't know. Like there's a chance that we could catch a lawsuit. So unfortunately, some of the juiciest stuff didn't make it into the show, but. I mean, there's still a lot of crazy stuff in there. So
much stuff.
But I think that was like a real learning experience for us, because I think for Reggie and I, like, and I should say, to back up 1 second, like, we're treating this episode right now as if the audience has only heard the first episode of Mogul. Right. Chances are some of you have listened to the whole thing on Spotify, and maybe that might be a little frustrating for you, but we don't want to spoil.
Yeah.
What's to come for the people who are going to listen to it on iTunes or SoundCloud. Or
Chris Lighty does not get kidnapped at any point throughout the series of Mogul. Right.
But having said that, without going into the detail again, I think one of the real, you know, the learning curve for us was we're talking to these people and we are getting these incredible stories, and our instinct is fuck it, let's go. Yeah. Put it right in there. You know, and I think what we really had to be, I don't want to say taught, but like we had to realize, like, no, like this is the aspect of journalism that we frankly haven't been doing a whole, you know, no, okay, who can verify that? Who can fact check that? Can we get someone else to say that on record? No, they won't say that on record. What about this person? What about that person? And, you know, I think in the end it made for definitely a stronger project, and I think it made us all kind of like sharpen our skills as journalism as journalists. But yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot of stuff where if it had been up to you and me, probably it would have been like hashtag kid, you know, whatever the case may be.
But when you decide to do a phenomenal project like this, don't you have the responsibility to, because you can control the narrative, you have the responsibility to kind of paint the picture that there was more to Chris than the spicy shit that's out there or the hearsay. Like,
yeah, and I think we did that.
Right. Whereas that's what I'm saying. Like when in the beginning process of it, when you know that you could add that and take the risk, but you just figure out, you know what, he was more than just the alleged story, you know, or the spicy shit, if you will.
Yeah, and I think one of the feedback we got from people who knew him in the industry was like, "Hey, we appreciate that you guys didn't go for that right off the bat.
Right.
That it wasn't, all right, this is the salacious shit that's going to grab a headline, but actually, like, it was a way more nuanced, thoughtful, you know, portrait."
But King just said something that I think is important, and I want all of us to discuss, is that you said that when we were putting this together, we were controlling the narrative, but I kind of feel like the narrative, in a sense, controlled us. Like, right? Mm-hmm. Can we talk about that? Yeah. Like it's hard to. This is like what I realize is this is hard to say. This is this is going to be the fucking story, part A, part B, part C. It just takes you, and you can't anticipate where this thing is going to take you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think we all had a very different idea of where this thing was going to go when we embarked on it. But then you talk to more and more people and you get these different sort of like shades and nuances, and you get dragged in these different directions. So people, unless you've listened on Spotify, you wouldn't have heard the sort of the third episode, which is mostly about like Warren G. And that was something that kind of, I don't think we'd necessarily planned for the majority of one episode to be about Warren G. But he just happened to be one of those guys that we met him and we spoke to him, and he was just like so fucking compelling and so amazing and such a great storyteller. We're just like, all right, like this guy has to get his own episode. And I suppose when people hear it, they'll agree maybe he should get his own series, his own TV show, Warren G the movie.
The cartoon or something.
The cartoon.
No, Warren G was great, man. And that was a great get, man, because, for those that don't know about how we got Warren G, like we flew out to LA, Matt, myself, and Mena to sit down with Warren G. And we were there from like a Friday to like Sunday night.
Right.
But you decided to stay an extra day, and when we got to, we couldn't find Warren G. We were able to sit down with Russell, but we could not find Warren G. So I fly back thinking we didn't get Warren G. How did you land the Warren G? Because you conducted that interview all on your own, man.
I did. Yeah, it was you had literally just arrived at the airport when I got a call from. We employed a booker to help us get some celebrities and stuff. And she was like, right, we've got Warren, like, saddle up. You've got to get to this. I forget where this town was. It's this obscure town outside of LA. And I was like, Reggie, have you boarded? You got to come back. But you were just like, I don't know, you were just about to board. Yeah. So I had to go and like get Warren G myself. And were you kind of intimidated at having to do that?
Yeah, he was texting me saying, I don't know what I should do.
I was shitting myself.
Why? But why though?
I don't know. Well,
I said, just go there, man. He was like, I don't know. Is it right? They won't tell me what building it is. I said, just start knocking on doors.
Like you, before you go, like you have I think that you have this thing where, and you even said it at the top of this episode, like I'm this white guy from Scotland. I'm this white, but that you kind of actually hold on to that, like as a mechanism.
Right.
And so because, in this culture, like, yeah, of course, there's different people, but I think you kind of carried that on your own.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, well, to be fair, by this point in the project,
right.
I'd done enough of it that I sort of was less burdened with those feelings. It was more just because everybody fucking knows Regulate. Everybody knows Warren G.
Right.
Like, Regulators, mount up, like that. I mean, that song was huge in Scotland as well. So I was like, fuck, it's Warren G. And the place where I met him was really random as well. He has this like recording studio, but it's out on some sort of like industrial estate surrounded by like offices and like random businesses and stuff. And I couldn't find it. And I met someone in the parking lot and was like, I'm looking for Warren G. And they were just like, oh, okay, like, wait here. And they went outside and there was this office with all like blacked out windows and stuff. And the guy like disappears in, comes out, and he's like, okay, and like go up and like knock on the door, and like it opens up and there's just like smoke like floods out of it.
Weed smoke,
yeah. And there's like Warren G, and he just stood there with like a blunt, and he's talking to someone on the phone, and he like looks at me, looks at the blunt, looks back at me, looks at the blunt, and he just like passes me the joint before he's even said anything to me. And I was just like,
and did you reach out? Did you reach out and grab the blunt, man?
Nah, I was like, nah, I've got to work. Like, I've got to do an interview, fucking interview Warren G. I can't smoke a joint.
Right.
But he just like finished off his conversation and sat down with me, but he was expecting you. Like he wanted you. He was like,
of course.
He was like, "Where's Reggie? What's this guy?" And I was just like, I had to explain that you were like mid-air, like on a flight back to New York, and I was like, "Fuck, like you're gonna have to like make do with me." And he is just like,
was he disappointed, or did you get a sense that he was disappointed? Or
well, he's not got Combat Jack.
I know, but I'm saying, did you get a sense? Or was he cool about it?
I think he was cool about it, but he definitely like he expected you. Like our styles of interviewing are different because like Combat Jack is way more like fluid and conversation and let's like chop it up, let's shoot the shit. Whereas I'm just like more like cold hard, like give me stories, like tell me the stories in detail. And a lot of the stuff I was asking him, he'd done on your show. Like I was asking him about when he was kind of discovered by Paul Stewart for like Indo Smoke, and how then that record got passed on to Chris Lighty, who was like, okay, like we gotta get this guy, we gotta sign this guy, and he ends up at Def Jam, and that kind of saves Def Jam. That whole sort of story that we get into in episode 3. And I really wanted all those details, but he was just like, I fucking told Reggie this. Like, I've already said all this stuff. And I was like, but no, like, please, like, you need to say it again. And we were like, reached this like moment of impasse where I was like, he was talking about the day he met Paul Stewart, who's a kind of well-known record producer. I think he's been on your show before, right? Yeah. He was talking about like that day, and I was like, but no, like, tell me more. Like, what was Paul Stewart wearing? Like, what were you wearing? Like, all the dumb shit that like radio producers like ask to get like really kind of rich, like vivid kind of visual stories. And he was just like, he got so frustrated. And there's this clip of him we actually use in the episode where he's just like,
so what else do you want me to tell you? How I walked to the bathroom and pissed and was drinking Hennessy and shitted, probably eating food. What else do I need to tell you?
Those are good details.
What socks I had on?
Do you remember?
No, I don't.
And then like he kind of like after that, like I suppose his spirit was like somewhat broken. He's like, I'm not gonna get fucking rid of this guy until like I give up the goods. So he just like told the stories, and he was great though. That is like probably one of the top 10 coolest things that's happened in my entire life.
You didn't smoke weed, that's why. If you just took a little pull, he probably would feel comfortable.
Right. So next time I should just take drugs if they're offered to me.
You know, just be part of like this social circle, man. You know, I definitely want to talk about another interview that we had, man. That we had such high expectations for, but we had to go through so much shit, and we didn't get as much as we wanted to. Is when we flew down to Miami to interview Noriega.
Yes.
You know, Drink Champs Noriega. Let's talk about that, man. Like, shit. I know that. You know, it's weird, man. Like Nori, you know, I love Nori, and Nori and I have history. But it's ill. When we went to Miami, it was almost like, and I guess this is some rapper shit also, but it's like we set a time to meet, but that time kept moving. Let's move it up. Let's move it back. Let's move it this. Let's move it that. Oh, we're doing Drink Champs. Oh, you absolutely have to come on Drink Champs first. And like, what were your concerns, man? Like, because it was like we went through hell trying to lock down Nori, man.
Well, my biggest concern was that for those of you who are familiar with Drink Champs, is it involves drinking, right?
Yes.
So you were drinking for like hours, and that show
was like, what was it, a 4-hour? Like we were
insane.
Well, first and foremost, we had to wait for him for like 2 hours.
Yeah,
maybe 3.
Yeah,
it was hot in Miami. We had to wait for him for 3 hours because they didn't start the show. It's not like where we have an episode of the Combat Jack show, or you guys have a Gimlet interview and we say we're going to start at 10 o'clock and we start at 10. Fucking guy shows up 3 hours late. And it's a fucking zoo already. Like the setup is for where they shoot Drink Champs is a zoo. It's like about 25 to 40 people in there. It's mad weed. It's mad alcohol. And I'm trying to pace myself. Like they're like, yo, come on. DJ EFN is like, come on, let's drink. I'm like, no, I'm good. No, I'm good. I took a little sip because I also knew that, to be on Drink Champs and to kind of like disarm these guys that I had to drink. And then they started passing around weed and I was like, no, I don't know if I took a toke. I don't know if I did. But that shit was a marathon even before Nori got there, man. And then he gets there and then it's like Nori's drunk. Right. He's drunk. He's slurring. And then the fucking Drink Champs episode is 3 fucking hours. What are you thinking, man? Like, how do you enjoy that, man?
Yeah, well, the thing for me, like, as the producer is, like, my job is to basically get Reggie to, set him up so he can do his best interview possible. And I suppose to make the guest comfortable as well, so they can kind of give their best interview possible. And these, like, the way the circumstances lined up was basically that exact opposite of that, like, what are the worst circumstances you can imagine to do an interview? Like, the host is hammered, the guest is hammered, everyone's high, like, it's a really, like, noisy room. Like,
there's mad people. Nori had, like, a mad amount of cats that were following us, and they were
like an entourage.
That's why I was texting him for that too. I was like, make sure you get that shit before they tape the Drink Champs.
We couldn't though, man.
I thought it's easy for me to say that sitting in my apartment.
Dude,
I was like, because I could see it, even though I couldn't see it. I was like, get the Mogul shit first. Don't wait till after drink, because I just knew what was going to go down. I mean,
Nori kind of held us hostage. He was like, you can't get this interview until you get on Drink Champs. And I mean, for the history of Drink Champs, that was actually kind of a funny episode with the
that was one
2 Chainz and Jack Thriller and the whole nine. Right. But then ultimately, like, was I that hammered? Was I that hammered when it came down to interviewing him?
I mean, you held it together. Yeah. Like, it was a Herculean effort by you, because you were just like drinking all night. And, you were good. You could definitely tell you'd had a few drinks, but yeah, I mean, Nori was like, he was kind of like slurring his words.
Father figure. Instead of father figure, he kept saying father figure.
Yeah, he was like not necessarily on his game, but I mean, like, fair enough though. He gave us some really insightful stories, and there's the one that kind of makes it in to the series where not to give it away for people who haven't heard, but he talks about his wedding day and how Chris Lighty kind of had a big role in Nori's wedding, in particular the positioning of his socks. So I'm gonna leave that.
Don't give it away.
To understand that story, you have to listen. You have to listen to the episodes. Yeah, but it's a really cool story. And he said something else which we didn't use, but was very sort of insightful for me. And he was like asking, "Do you watch Entourage?" He was saying this to me, and I was like, "No, I don't." And then he called me a foul human being. It's like, oh, that's cool. Nori just called me a fucking foul human being.
Did he say you're a foul fucking human?
Foul human being? Yeah. He's like, do you watch Entourage? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, because you're a foul human being. But I was like, all right, Nori, fine. And then he goes on to talk about, what's the name of the agent again? Ari Gold. Ari Gold.
I actually just watched Entourage for the first time last month.
Oh, well, you're a foul human being too.
No, that show is foul. I couldn't believe how fucked up that show is. I can't believe that shit was a hit, but keep going.
So he's talking about Ari Gold, and he says, like, look, the thing about Ari Gold is he has one favorite client. It's all about that guy, Vince.
Yes.
Vince. I'm telling the story really badly because I don't watch that fucking show. But he's like, yeah, he loves Vinny Chase. He's like, his number one guy is Vinny Chase. For Chris Lighty, all of his clients were Vinny Chase.
Right.
Like, he loved all of his guys. Right. Every single one of them, he'd do anything for them. And I know it was just one of those things that just sort of like cracked open like another element of like who Lighty was and like what he meant to the industry. I was like, okay, I understand that. Like he really went the extra mile for all of his people, and that's something that we found out later on as well. So
why don't we use that tape? That's good.
It just didn't fit in. Okay. I feel like I've been put on the spot for our editorial decisions. It's not just me as well. We have a whole team of editors. Right. These aren't just my decisions.
You know, one of the stories he told also, which stuck in my mind, is like, you know, Chris helped me make my first million.
Mm-hmm.
And it just put into context, because I don't know you could sit back and you could look at these guys and you could surmise or try to guess what their net worth is. But then when they actually tell you, like, and of course it could have been embellishment too, but like, it was something about him saying, like, Chris really made sure I made my first million. Like that was kind of like the theme that I got from some of the people that we spoke to. It's like, you know, I'm going to go hard with you. And then when you make your first million, you're going to find I'll just be here to support you, which was kind of ill, man. It was, you know?
Well, I mean, one of his greatest legacies, I suppose, is he empowered a lot of people to make a lot of money. He made a lot of black millionaires, and the way that he kind of structured deals as well, where people could like get equity and get their share rather than getting a one-off payment. You know, like if you advertise something and that company blows up, you're going to get paid because that company's blown up and you're going to keep receiving checks. So yeah, that sort of Nori thing kind of like was like, yeah, that's like an epiphany. That's why Lighty's so important.
Yeah. Chris, were there any stories that you were interested in having fleshed out that didn't materialize about Chris?
Yeah, I don't want to necessarily, say what they were because I think that'll give away part of the rest of the show for those people who haven't listened to it yet. But I think overall we covered a lot. You know, if anything, I would say, you know, I would have liked to have done even more episodes. I would say that would be more so than one story.
Yeah, why didn't we do more episodes? What is that the powers that be that only had this at 6 episodes? Because that's been the only real complaint.
Well, I mean, look, let's tell the truth, and you know, maybe, you know, we'll air a little bit of our dirty laundry right now for the audience. There was probably a moment where, you know, this thing was looking kind of shaky.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes. You know, were we going to be able to pull this off? And you know, Matt, you don't have to give the official Gimlet Company line, but my Chris Morrow sense was,
we're going to lose this.
Oh, no, we weren't going to lose this, but like, all right, you know, where's this going? We were working on it for a long time.
I remember at the 6-month mark, it was like,
yeah, there were moments where it felt like maybe we were spinning our wheels a little bit. And now, I think now that we're on the other side of it, we know that that's the process.
Right.
But
as Alex Bloomberg recently told us.
Yeah. Every show. And, you know, like, and I know that from working on books, which isn't the same necessarily as this, but like, you know, I've written a lot of books, but I still know that every time I sit down to start a new one, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to pull this off. Like, this is impossible. This shit ain't happening. I should just call these guys right now and tell them,
take your money back.
Yeah. Just like this isn't going to work. And then you get past that and there are like these moments where you're like, man, like, take your money back. I quit. I'm going to go start a farm somewhere. You know, like, I'm out of this whole thing. And then you get through that. But I think, you know, for us, this the first time doing a project of this nature, you know, maybe that moment came earlier than I was, you know, we were like, whoa. So I think there was a moment where, you know, probably from Gimlet's side, it was like, okay, maybe if they hedge their bets by saying this is going to be a 6-part episode as opposed to an 8 or whatever this could have potentially been, I think there was a moment where they were like, all right, this thing actually has the legs and we're going to make it where we want to go.
Yeah.
What do you think on that?
I think, you know what it was is like when you're booking for a story like this, you know, you get the initial round of interviews and you have a lot of connections in the industry, Reggie, and that was really helpful. But we reached the point where we kind of got the people that you knew and it was hard to get anyone else because a lot of them, like, maybe they don't know what Gimlet is or they're not sure what we're trying to do here.
Or why do another, you know, some people had already been on a Combat Jack show and they're like,
right,
you want me to come back on the podcast? And it was kind of hard to explain to them that this wasn't the Combat Jack show.
Yeah, and people didn't really know what we're doing. And I think it was just one of those where we kind of like, we ran out of steam, we ran out of momentum, but then we got a few big bookings. And I think that was around the time we got Russell Simmons, the Warren G interview came through. And then you can go to people and you can say, look, we're doing this thing. We have Russell, we have Warren, we have like DJ Red Alert, we have da 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 da. And then you start to pick up momentum, and then it gets faster and faster. And then as we approach the finish line, I suppose, I agree, like maybe there was enough material to do more episodes. I will point out though that there's the Fat Joe bonus. So
Fat Joe bonus, which is great.
Technically there is 7 of them.
You're right. Season 2 should just be Fat Joe.
Just all Fat Joe, yeah.
All Fat Joe.
Good.
But let me ask you, man, did you find that coming into this world, and getting people to open up about Chris, did you find that it was more difficult than in any other type of projects that you may have worked on, or that Gimlet's worked on?
I mean, for me personally, I haven't worked on anything like this before. Where
congratulations, by the way, this is your first major project, right?
Yeah, well, I've done some stuff before, but this is my first like 6-part series. And I mean, people don't want to hear like my professional backstory, but like I did a lot of like sports stories and like human interest pieces. So the like most powerful thing I've done is like the first soccer game for NYCFC at Yankee Stadium. That was like kind of the shit that I was doing.
Right.
I hadn't done something where like a life has been lost and you're like, and in such like, early tragic way, and people are still confused about exactly how it happened. So yeah, I hadn't dealt with that sort of stuff before. So it was really new for me as well. But I think that the only sort of toolkit you can bring into that is like being like a human being and understanding, you have to do your job, and you have to get the best material, but at the same time, you have to like have like a heart and try to, be sensitive to how people are feeling. Although I will say that there's probably a fair amount of tension because you were ultimately the one who had to ask the questions.
Right.
And I'm the one sat there like prodding you and being like, well, you have to ask all these uncomfortable questions about, somebody taking their own life and all this other stuff that's going on. So that was definitely a hard sort of dynamic for us to figure out.
Yeah, we have other shows on loudspeakers where other hosts or talent definitely go for the hard questions. But that's definitely not my style. And I found that to be just difficult to get over, because, I'll be honest, I knew that she was very important to the show, having Lighty's mom involved, but she was the last person I wanted to speak to. Like, I did not want to speak to her because it was just so emotionally just overwhelming. You know what I mean? And you guys knew at a certain point, like, he does not want to talk to her, but you guys kept fucking pushing. And in the long run, it worked, but you had to know I didn't want to speak to her. You had to know right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's probably the most unpleasant part of the job for me is to ask somebody to do something that they don't want to do. But ultimately, we knew that if you have Lighty's family, it's just that the emotional resonance of the entire show is just going to be increased by, 100, 200 times. So we had to do, we had to just sort of make some awkward phone calls and do some things. But I mean, when we actually went and did the interview, I think that, you had a really good rapport and, it was hard for her, but I guess, it's nice for people to be able to kind of tell these stories and to, remember a loved one and hopefully kind of add to their legacy.
Talk about, once again, for those that haven't listened to the series, there's a point where we just uncover some things. Talk about how you guys were able to get some of these, like police reports and medical reports, and like, how do you get that? Like, how do you get that stuff, man?
I mean, we used private investigators. There's a lot of interns making trips back and forth to various municipal and state, offices and facilities. I mean, I don't want to say exactly who went where because, again, that's going to give a lot of stuff away. Right. But
like there was tax information, like all
there was a lot of legwork that went into this. But I think that's where you get the depth of the reporting that we did, where it's just not, hey, let's just Google this and see what it says, but let's actually go to the source material.
Right.
Let's send somebody to the courthouse. let's send somebody to, like you said, the tax offices, whatever it may be. Let's call this attorney. Let's call that person. And then, I think that, again, for us, in terms of the process, like, we had to wrap our heads around it. And you could do all that. You could send this person to the courthouse. You could get this private investigator. And they can bring back some really interesting, tantalizing information and still not use it just because we can't then collaborate that with, the right amount of sources. So, this was real journalism. This was real, roll up your sleeves, and just get into the material and find out what's out there.
What else are we talking about, guys? What else do you guys want to talk about?
I'm curious just to kind of hear about your experience of making it, because it was a story that was close to home for you in a lot of ways. It was very different to what you'd done. Like, I don't know, like, how is the past? Because we've been doing this for over a year.
Yeah,
how's it been?
It's funny because when I came into this, when we started this project, I made it a point that I didn't have any expectations. So, even knowing that, the process would be different, that it'd be something that I never did before, I came in with no expectations. And even like, like you said, we probably had interviewed like 50 to 100 people, like, at a certain point, fatigue set in because, this is not the only thing that I'm doing. It's like the Combat Jack show and Sirius and then the family and the whole nine. So at a certain point I hit fatigue, but at the same time, it was like, because I didn't have any expectations, it's like I knew it was going to be a marathon, but it was hard, like just physically, it was hard. And then, after a while, as we started getting deeper into Lighty's life, and like I said, we don't want to give it away, but at some points the story gets really heavy, and that heaviness just holds you. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, you can't, like, I would go home and try to shower the heaviness away, and it just wouldn't go away because we still had to go through that part of the story. So it was challenging. It was really, really challenging. I mean, at the same time, it was really satisfying. I don't want to say I got bored, but just in terms of like the explosion of like rap and urban voices in the podcast sphere last year, I was like, I want to see something bigger. I want to be involved with something bigger. And what was encouraging me to move forward was like, this was it. Like, I kept promising that, at least with regard to our stories, like this was going to change the game. So that kept encouraging. But at the same time, man, it was tough. It was really, really tough. And also even getting accustomed to the culture of Gimlet, where, I get it. Like you have to go hard for the story, but sometimes it was like, I'm such an emotional person. I just felt that sometimes we had to do things from my perspective that was just emotionally cold. You know what I mean? Like the pushy, like I'm not a pushy guy. So that part was just hard to adapt to. But then once we hit a certain point and we got the momentum to close this, not even knowing if it was going to be like 2 or 3 months down the line, it's like, okay, I got it now. I got it. But it was fucking tough, man. Yeah. This is a fucking beast. Like, the only thing I can compare this to is when I did, when I used to take Bikram yoga and there's this 30-day challenge where they challenge you to take Bikram 30 days consecutively. And I had done 30 days of Bikram, and I didn't, I just felt bugged out. Like, I was like, I don't even know who I am anymore. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like with this, at a certain point, it's like, you're just fucking shell shocked. It's just like, and you just got to keep moving forward. You got to keep moving forward. You got to keep moving forward. But very satisfying, man. Definitely look forward to doing this again. Still want to enjoy this little break though, because I'm still fucking fatigued from this process,
Decompress.
Yeah, man. It's tough. And then, just like, the reality of it is hip hop. And, I am accessible to a lot of the people that we spoke to. And one of the things that I was concerned is, you never know how, even with the Combat Jack show, I've said some things and then it takes a life of its own. And then you never know how people are going to react. And in this instance, we're talking about somebody that so many people love, from the boardroom to the streets. And it's like, damn, if somebody takes us the wrong way, Like, how am I, you know what I'm saying? Does this add stress to my life? And then I have to watch where I go now because somebody's offended by what we've uncovered about Lighty. So that was also taxing. You know what I mean? Like, that was really, really taxing. I mean, and recently I was someplace, and not that, not that, I think everyone's taken, even the people closest to Lighty, I think they've taken this, like, they really appreciate this story. But I think some people wanted more involvement. I think some people, they wanted to be part of this project. And so, there's been people that's just been calling me. I'm just like, it's like, yo, I have a private life too. I have a social life too. It's not just Mogul. It's not the Combat Jack show. So it's just having to adapt to that as well. Like, people like wanting to hold on to me to extend this story beyond what the story is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a real burden as well, just sort of like taking on this massive story and kind of living with somebody's life for like over a year. And I found that as well. Like, it just sort of like consumes you. Like, I had like, there's a bunch of pictures of him in like our office. Like, you'd always kind of see him, and again, not to give things away, but I guess how we kind of perceived him or who we thought he was changed a lot during the course of the thing, and it kind of morphed, and he's a really complicated guy. With like,
Jesus, this guy was complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot of light there, but there's also a lot of darkness, and it was hard. Like, it just sort of took an emotional toll. You'd come in and you'd find something out, and I've never met Lighty, but you almost feel like you know the person because you spend so much time talking. We sat with his his mother, his sister, his brothers and stuff, and it was really hard.
Yeah, I think actually, you know what? I was going to ask you, when do you think, Chris was saying that at a certain point, like, we didn't know where we were going. At what point did the story, like, at what point did we like get that extra gas to keep going?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I gotta go back to my man Warren G. Like, he was just so good, and then I knew exactly what that episode was going to be, and we actually, if you remember the process, we built out from the middle. So Warren G is the third episode, and that was the first one that I sort of built. That was the first one when we got you into the studio, and you did your tracking. And the first thing where everything kind of came together, where you took these elements, and I suppose like our sort of like traditional audio documentary style, and we just sort of that was kind of interweaved with like you and like what the unique sort of like voice that you have, which is very different from a lot of other voices you hear on the radio, to be fair. And that was the first time we sort of realized the potential of what this thing could be. And it felt really fucking good and really cool and like funny and emotional and just compelling. And you sounded so good as well. And everybody was like, oh my God, like this is just going to be great. And then we sort of knew like, yeah, we really have something there. And we built back from there. It was like, okay, we have 3. How do we get there? Let's do episodes 1 and 2. And then we did the back half later on. So yeah, he really like, I think like that LA trip, like, I mean, a lot of crazy stuff happened, and there was a time when we thought we were going to come back with nothing. I was like, shit, maybe I'm going to get fired.
Were you constantly concerned that you were going to get fired?
No, I didn't really think I was going to get
Back
fired.
to the sports beat.
Right. I was just like, my bosses people will be disappointed. I've wasted a bunch of company money, like going to LA.
Was LA after Miami?
LA was
after.
Yeah, it was. It was after.
And like we got that one story out of Nori that was great, but like to be fair, we internally had hyped that a lot.
Yeah.
We've been like, yo, Nori is the greatest.
Only because he's got so much momentum right now.
But we had been like, yo, Nori is like the guy we need because he's the best storyteller, and we're going to come away with so much amazing tape from this interview. And then, you guys came back and there was like, all right, we got maybe,
5 minutes.
Like 2 minutes. So yeah, I think the pressure probably really was on for LA, because if you come back, because LA was also Russell Simmons, right?
Yes.
So Russell Simmons
and Warren
G. So like if you come back from that with Russell didn't give us anything and we couldn't find Warren G, his studio was locked, that's a problem.
we would have been completely fucked.
Right? Yeah.
But now it came together. That Russell Simmons, like, I guess maybe the purpose of this show is to kind of give people behind the scenes. But that was a unique experience as well. Like, he is an exceptional human being. He's like,
let's talk about Russell. Like Chris, you work with Russell. Like, you, out of everybody in this room, man, you deal with Russell the most, man. Like who is Russell these days, man?
I mean, that's a big question. Russell's a unique character. I love Russell. Like, he's a friend of mine and has, definitely done a lot for me in terms of my career. Like, I owe a lot of what I've been able to achieve just kind of to him giving me that kickstart a while ago. I mean, who is Russell? I mean, the one thing I will say about Russell, when people ask me that is, the thing I really kind of admire about him, maybe more so than like, oh, he built this company or sold that company, is for a powerful guy, for a guy who kind of has worlds orbiting around him. And we know a lot of people like that who are like the kings of their own universe. Most people like that, you can't speak freely to them. You're
not accessible?
It's not even that accessible. Like, you got to be a yes man and you got to kind of tell them what they want to hear. Russell, you can say anything to that guy. And anybody can say it.
Right.
It doesn't matter. If you meet him on the street, you can tell him that's the stupidest shit I've ever seen. And he's not going to toss you out of the room.
But it seems like he also actually looks for that.
He looks for it. And I think that's his strength. That's what's always interesting about him is, now, Russell might say anything to you. You know what I mean? You have to be ready that Russell could say anything to you.
Like he said to you.
What'd he say to you?
What do you call you? This white motherfucker? Who's this white motherfucker?
Right. So
that's what I'm saying. Like, you might get a little knocked off balance by him, but if you would, I don't know what you said in reply, but you could have said anything to him and he would have been cool with it. Whereas there's some other hip hop moguls out there, or moguls in any industry, if they say some wild shit to you and you come right back at it, then you're out of there.
Yeah,
it's over. They don't want that back and forth. Russell lives for that shit.
Yeah. Well, the first time I met him was kind of crazy because we arrived a bit early and I was just like, it was set up by his assistant. And I said to the front desk, like, I just want to go to the assistant and tell her we're here. And she's like, okay. The receptionist is like, go to that room over there. So I walk into this room. I see his assistant. She's on the phone. And she just sort of like holds up a finger and is like, one moment, just let me finish this call. So I'm just sort of stood in this room and then I hear this voice that I hadn't really kind of gotten my bearings and looked around, but I just hear this voice and it's just like, who the fuck is this? And I turn around and it's Russell Simmons. And he's like he had this, it was like a like Bond villain type setup. He had like this sort of like circular desk and it just seemed to have like all these screens around it. And he's just like there with like 8 different screens and like magazines piled high. And he's just like looking at me and he's just like, who the fuck are you? And like, I was just like, I can't remember what I said to him. I was like, oh, something really dumb. Like, oh, I'm really surprised to see you there. And he's just thinking like, it's my fucking office. Who do you expect to see? But I was like, I'm Matthew Nelson. And he's like, who the fuck is this? And I was like, I'm Combat Reggie O'Shea interview. And I think he knows you as Combat Jack. Right. So he was just like, who the fuck is that? And I was like, Combat Jack interview. And then he's just like, oh, okay. And then his assistant is like, yeah, they're your like 3 o'clock or whatever. Yeah. But he like, yeah, he was really cool. He was just like, so full of energy.
And he keeps beautiful women around him, man.
Very
like
much so, yeah.
the chick that was like, we did this interview with this chick in the room and he just kept like talking about how great she was. Like she was this
nutritionist
doctor kind of like, and I'm just like, dude, like Russell, that's one thing. Like Russell stays with beautiful women all the time, man.
Russell's going to ride it till the wheels fall off. Man.
Really? Like that's crazy, man. I would say the highlight of that point though, and I know you guys, particularly Mena and Matt, like, once he gave me the okay to do yoga that morning with him.
Oh yeah.
What time was it? Like 8 in the morning?
It was real early.
Yeah. And you guys were like, yo, get some information out of him. I was like, what fucking information I'm about to fucking touch my toes. Like what information do y'all want me to get? But that was,
you mean they want you to like interview him in the
studio? Him like in the locker room, like our balls are hanging out and everything. I'm not going to interview Russell about, Lighty.
That's when he's at his best, though, to tell you the truth.
Really?
Not in the locker room, but like after he gets out of class, he's on that kind of high, like that yoga high, and he's very reflective, So I was probably pushing for that. I was probably like, yo, get Russell. Because I know, like, when I do work on books with him, like, that's when I want to get him.
Right.
Like, right after the class. Like, let him take a shower.
Have you done yoga with him, man?
Oh, yeah, a million times. It fucked me up last time, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I think I'm sick because of it, but that's a whole nother story.
Right,
but he actually, he has his own studio now. You probably didn't go there, but he has his own studio, Tantris, in LA.
Oh, no, he was telling me about it.
Yeah,
like, he was having like a big like launch. And
yeah, it's beautiful. Like, he really did a nice job with it. And so I forget the name of the place that you guys probably went, but
it's the place he goes to Moda.
Yeah,
Moto.
that's it. Yeah,
Moto. Yeah, goes to Moto. What else, man? What else are we missing?
I guess just in terms of like getting people excited, like people who are listening to this who haven't kind of heard all 6 episodes. What is like your highlight of the series? Like, what moment sort of sticks out for you? Is like, yeah, I'm really fucking proud of that bit. And
when we go into like, you know, the history of hip hop in the South Bronx and how it parallels Lighty's life, or how we touch on, you know, certain moments, you know, in hip hop's history in New York, like the Latin Quarter and Red Alert, and like, you know, the whole Jungle Brothers thing, and you know, even when we talk about briefly like the tunnel, like just these moments that some of us lived through, and just bringing that back. You know, the very first interview we did was when we talked to Original Violators, and that seems to be the part of the story that everybody loves, when we were talking about, you know, sneakers and you know, how important it was for us when we didn't have anything and New York City was bankrupt. But if you could find like $55 and buy yourself a pair of sneakers, you were it. Capturing also a sense of, you know, how dangerous and how lawless New York City was back in the day. I love that. And then just, you know, the action. Like, there's a lot of action. Like, one of the things that fascinates me now even more after we did this story about Lighty is how this guy, whatever the hell was going on in his mind, whatever the hell was going on in his life, he was this guy that, you know, most of us, when there's danger, we run away from it. But this guy seems to just be attracted to it. Like, the shit got him off or anything. Like, there was a fight and this guy would walk to it. You know what I mean? Even when, like, you know, parts of the story where he was injured and he still went to it. I mean, I don't operate like that. You know, I'm done. Like, ow. You know what I mean? So that aspect of it is just like really colorful, just really, it's, you know, it's cliche, but it is a movie. It's cinematic, it's visceral, and it just takes you there. I think those are my, you know, and then talking to the daughter, like that's one of the things that I love. That's when, to me, the story turned for me, because even though we had to discuss some pretty heavy topics with her, she was light. She was always light. Even, you know, at the points where she broke down and cried, I always felt it was just light, just a lot of light coming from her, man. Tiffany Lighty is just so special. Like, I think she added, and I know we didn't use a lot of what we got from her, but I think the times that we did, she just brings a lot of light to the story, man.
Yeah.
You know?
How about you, Moro?
I liked a lot of the moments that Reggie mentioned. You know, one of the things that was exciting for me was, especially with some of the stuff in the first episodes when we talked about native tongue movement or Jungle Brothers, just getting a chance to introduce maybe new audiences to those artists and that music, because they were, you know, to use the Jungle Brothers as an example, like at the time, they were such an important group to me, you know, in the late 80s. And I feel like they've been lost to history a little bit.
Yeah, they were a blip, because when they came out, it was just like, how does their legacy stand when that year that they came out is like Public Enemy drops It Takes a Nation a Million, and then the backdrop of Eric B. and Rakim and Boogie Down Productions, and like so much, like so. Of course, you know, looking back, it's, I mean, I had to go back to their first album, Straight Out the Jungle, a couple of years ago, and really reappreciate that record.
And it was 20 years ahead of its time.
Yeah,
truthfully.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think just on that level, you know, that's one of the things I loved about this project. And, you know, like, it's an interest. I think that was one of the things we had to figure out working on this is, okay, when we come across these artists in Lighty's story, how much background do we have to provide? How much do we have to fill the audience in? Because to me, you don't have to tell anybody who A Tribe Called Quest is, or Jungle Brothers, or De La Soul, or all these other groups that Lighty managed. But, I'm realizing that now that's a great part of history to a lot of people. And, there's a moment, like I've told this story amongst us, but I'll tell it on air. Like, I remember there was a time when we were, trying to figure out the episode that 50 Cent is featured in that tells that story. And 50, we don't have to give any backstory. Everybody knows 50. And I'm in a pharmacy waiting in line in downtown Soho that afternoon, and they're like two 17-year-old kids in front of me, and In the Club comes on over the speakers in the store, and the one kid looks at the other kid and goes, yo, do you know who sings this song? And the other kid's like, nah, I don't know his name. And then the kid goes, yeah, me neither, but I think he got shot or something like that.
What?
And I was like, these kids don't know who 50 Cent is.
Wow.
Forget about Jungle Brothers and A Tribe Called Quest and De La and BDP. Like, they don't know 50. So
50. That's crazy.
But then again, you could say, why should they?
Right, because it's 10 years later. They were 7 years old
like
when In the Club was out.
So, one of the things that has really excited and kind of kept me energized about this project is, as people who came up in that first wave of hip hop who were there, like, we really have a job to tell these stories now, because we can't assume
that they know,
that anybody knows.
Or they're gonna know.
And they're gonna know. And we're growing older, like, this is the time to really preserve these stories and kind of mark it down in history now. So as much as Mogul could help do that, and hopefully also set the stage to do it some more, I think, we did something important.
So what's next? What are we doing next, man? There's all this talk about season two, man.
Season 2, yeah.
One of the things I don't want to do season 2, man, is I don't want to go dark. This is season 2. I don't know. Are you guys pushing for that?
So, somebody on the internet asked if you were, now that season 1 is completed, are you going to run the marathon?
I was in an emotionally vulnerable place when I made that proclamation last year. Who knows? Haven't been working out. That's another thing too. Like, this whole process is just like, I've had really no time for myself. But mind your fucking business, internet. But I just look forward to like
hit us up, send us your suggestions.
Yeah, who y'all want to
tell us who you want to hear. We probably won't listen, but you should send us what you got.
Chime in.
And but you got to do it soon, because the wheels could already be in motion.
I know, man. Put it in the comment section. Put it in the and listen. Oh wait, internets. That's what you got to do. Go to iTunes, Apple Podcasts, rate, subscribe, comment. This is a rare opportunity for all of us, man, to get, storytelling by us, for us, of us. I think Mogul's great. I think it's made waves, but if it doesn't kill it, I'm saying, if we don't get those comments and those, there might not be any more Moguls. You know what I mean? So let's make this thing happen. I loved it. I want to see more stories like this. I want to tell more stories like this. I want you guys to hear more stories like this. So definitely, man,
rate and subscribe. It makes a difference.
Yep.
It makes a big difference.
Yep. What are we missing, man? Is there anything else? Is there anything else?
I hope people enjoy the show.
Yeah, man. Let us know. One of the things that makes me feel good is I know the hip hop audience we're a tough crowd to please. The way you guys have been shitting on All Eyes on Me, the Tupac movie, I'm glad it's them and not us. You know what I'm saying? Because you guys are roasting that movie. You know what I mean?
But I will say, not to pat ourselves on the back too much, but almost to a person, everyone that, has heard this has loved it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows the material? And, I sent it early to a couple people who I know will tell me the truth, who would tell me if this shit, I was like, just let me know. And they're like, it's official. You guys did a good job. Yeah. So we are confident.
Yeah.
We're confident that you guys are going to love this story. Send it around, let people know so we can do more of them.
You know what's surprising though is the type of people who are responding to Mogul.
Yeah.
I imagine it to be just, the internets, like the cats that have supported, LSN and the Combat Jack show for years, but just the people that are coming to me.
Fabulous write-up in the New Yorker. How'd you feel about that?
I loved it. Shout out to Sarah Larson, man. She was just so thrilled to talk to me about this story. And she was just a nice person. We sat down and talked for 3 hours for that interview.
You know what I liked, especially about that review too, was she picked up on that moment with Russell.
Yeah.
Where he spoke about Lighty.
Yeah.
And the club. And what episode is that?
That's episode 2.
So you guys will hear that soon if you haven't already heard it. Yeah. And again, not to give it away, but there was a moment that I thought was really interesting in that episode. And as someone,
very honest.
As someone who like really knows, Russell speaks a million miles a minute, and sometimes it seems like he's talking in circles, and you're not sure what he's saying. I speak Russell Simmons, so I get what he's saying. And I was like, man, I don't know if people are going to pick up on that moment. Like, it might happen too fast. He might be going too fast. People might not catch it, but she caught it.
A lot of people picked up on it.
Yeah, and she pointed to that as one of the real kind of interesting moments. So that made me feel good about it.
Yeah. But yeah, like I was saying, man, just the types of people that are tuning in and listening to this, I'm surprised that it's hitting their ear holes in their desks, man. And I'm just really humbled by this. And, I want to, it's not over. Just because the show is out doesn't mean we can't push this. And we definitely need you guys internets to make this happen. So let's do it, man.
Can we say thank you to a couple of other people?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Jonathan Mena, who's sitting with us, of course, right here.
Yes.
Who did a little bit of everything. Let's say on the project, right? Right. He says correct.
A lot of the fixing, production.
The fixing, the quiet behind the scenes stuff.
Mm-hmm. The shooting. A King, you know what I'm saying? A King's definitely been helpful, particularly with regard to, helping us get some people, on the back end.
Yep.
With regard to like some promo and some things that we've been working out.
Also from the Gimlet side.
Yeah, can I?
Yeah, you do the Gimlets.
All right, yeah. So definitely the editors, like we had such great editing on this. So Lynn Levy from Radiolab, who's a huge influence on the project, is incredible. Caitlin Kenny, who's just a complete genius and a boss.
About to have a baby.
Yeah.
She worked out through this whole process.
Very heavily pregnant.
Heavily pregnant.
But still just running around making things sound so much better. Eric Eddings, who did the majority of the production for episode 6 and is going to be hosting his own Gimlet show very soon.
Dope.
Amazing. Meg Driscoll as well, who was the one who kind of cracked things open by finding a very important police report that if you listen, you'll hear more about that. And Meg did the majority of episode 5. And Isabella Kulkarni, Peter Bresnan, they're like...
Wait, Haley Shaw.
Yeah, Matt.
Just going to get to her.
Like the way she put together a lot of the sounds, not necessarily the soundtrack of the music, but just the sounds. Like if you hear, like glass breaking or like gunshots, like she did her fucking thing, man.
That's Haley. Yeah, just absolutely exquisite, like sound design, and she's a real like hip hop head as well. So she, I think, kind of like understood like the world that we were trying to create. And one of the things that she did, which is really incredible, is a lot of the sound effects you hear are not sort of like spot on. They're not literal. They're like things that maybe sound like other things, and it's quite kind of impressionistic. And yeah, she just like changed the landscape of it. So we had all those great people. We had like Alex Bloomberg, our boss, would pop in time to time. Yeah. So it was like a real great team.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Chris. In the end, man, what'd you think? Because I know there was a lot of internal discussion, and I know there's a lot of limitations. Like initially when we first started this, particularly with the trailers that we were sending out, to our closed circles, like the music was the music. It was the music that the artists from all of these eras created. And, as we got into like full production, we couldn't use a lot of the music. Like I wanted to use everything and we couldn't. And, the first trailer sounded so different from the second trailer, like the last trailer.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about the music, man?
Well, I mean, I think the music, people really enjoyed it. So I think that's great. I'm not going to lie. Like my instinct in all these scenes is to use the original music. And you just can't do it all the time. I mean, that's kind of what we learned through this process is, their rights and you can, a bigger issue is people talk a lot about fair use. Well, okay, you can just use that under fair use. But what we really learned through doing this is nobody, and this, when I say nobody, I mean the lawyers, nobody knows what is or is not fair use.
You can get hit at any moment.
You can get hit at any moment. And that's it kind of is running parallel to the evolution of podcasting in general, which is like when we started Loudspeakers, we were putting 15-minute Benjamin mixes in every show, and we were playing whatever sort of music we wanted to. And nobody gave a shit because nobody gave a shit about podcasts. So who cares if these guys are just throwing mixes in there? And as more attention has shined on the industry,
it's got a lot stricter.
You know, with that attention comes attorneys and rights and licensing and all that sort of shit. You know, and I tell people, I remember, you know, on Ice-T's podcast, you know, when he was starting that with us, he said, all right, well, I want to play this song and that song and that song, you know, in between the segments. And I said, well, you know, and they were his songs.
His songs, yeah.
I said, well, you can't use that. He goes, what the fuck you mean I can't use it? It's my song. I said, no, it's not your song.
It's whoever owns it.
It's Warner Brothers or whoever the case may be. And they're going to flag that thing on SoundCloud if you put it up there. And, you know, he couldn't believe it, but it was the case. So that's sort of where we're at right now. Whereas when we started, this was all the Wild West and we could do whatever we wanted. And, you know, now we're doing something like Mogul, which is essentially a movie, not only in terms of how it sounds, but also in terms of all the other stuff that comes with it too.
All
so,
moving parts.
You know, I think, and there's an article, I haven't read it, but there's an article that just came out, I think yesterday. I saw someone on my Twitter timeline about the effectiveness of original scores in podcasts and what works and what doesn't. I think they used S-Town as one of the examples. Wow. So I'll be interested to read that. I don't know if they talked about Mogul in it or not. But you know, as we talk about season 2, I think that's one of the things you got to really think about. Because I know when we start sitting around tossing these ideas around, oh, this be great, that be great, she'd be great, he'd be great. You hear the music. The music drives so much of your excitement about the project. But can you use all the music? That's what we'll have to find out. And also, you know, speaking of music, I thought someone who did a really great job on this is Nana, if I'm saying his name right, who kind of came, actually, you know, talked to his manager and just mentioned Mogul and, you know, hooked him up with you guys.
He's from the Wonderland camp. From
Jadena's producer. Yeah,
Jadena's producer.
And I thought he did a fantastic job. And so I just say shout out to him. I thought he really knocked it out.
Definitely. Matt, man, anything else? I mean, this is your first appearance on the Combat Jack show, man. You were actually at an episode with Uncle Murder.
Oh, right. Yeah,
you were at an episode with Uncle Murder. But this is your first.
Bore witness to one. Yeah. This is the first time
This is the first official.
It's amazing. I have to actually thank you guys for getting me a job, because my interview with Alex Bloomberg, who of course you know is a big Combat Jack fan, my job interview for Gimlet, he was like, you know, what sort of stuff are you into? And I spoke about this show. I was like, the Combat Jack show. And like, I guess he likes it. And they were just like, oh, this guy has like decent taste. He knows what's up.
Wow.
So
just cut us a check, man.
I wouldn't be, yeah. I got to give you 20% of all of my.
No, man. This is definitely good, man. And you know, going into season 2, man, we definitely got to reconnect and make this, you know, this project happen, man. Cause, you definitely, like I said, pushed me and I learned a lot, man. And I appreciate you. And I definitely want to do this again.
Yeah. Thank you. And likewise, you did an exceptional job.
Thank you.
I know there's a lot of hyperbole and talk of like raising the bar or changing the game, but this genuinely, nobody's done anything like this before.
You hear that, internet? You hear that? We raised the bar, internet.
Yeah.
There you go. Congratulations,
you're like
man.
the spearhead of that.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Well
Morrow, anything?
Nah, check it out. Enjoy the season. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you didn't like. Let us know what you'd like to see and hear more of. And as we mentioned before, star, rate, comment, do all that stuff.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Yep. Tell your friends, tweet about it, Facebook.
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Yeah, just help get the word out there. I think it's important.
Yep. King.
Season 2 marathon.
Season 2 marathon.
I can't wait.
I know you can't. Nah, man. But did you enjoy it, man?
Absolutely, man. Yeah. It was dope. I'm still learning as I continue to listen to it for like the 4th, 5th time already.
Damn, you on the 4th listen?
Yeah, it's like a new experience every time, man. Right. Honestly, I know one of the biggest things was, man, like, is there gonna be a visual component? We get a lot of that question, right? But you can kind of visualize it while listening. So it's like theater of the mind.
That's exactly what it is.
You know, and even in this episode here, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of takeaway from it that we listen to in the audience. So it's an ongoing learning experience.
There you go, man. Thank you. Internets.
Yes, sir.
Internets. Go listen to Mogul. And you know what it is, man. Dream those dreams and then man up, woman up, and live those dreams. Because life without dreams is black and white. And the universe flows in technicolor and surround sound. Mogul.
Numinati!
This episode of the Combat Jack Show was produced by Jonathan Mena. Executive produced by A. King and Chris Morrow. This is an official Loudspeakers Networks production.
So you guys both met him. I've heard a lot about him, but I never met him. Right. What was he like? If you're just explaining to somebody like me who's never met him before, what's the guy like? And can you think of a story that sort of illustrates that?
Entourage. You ever seen Ari Gold on Entourage? You never seen Ari Gold?
Well, the TV show, right?
Yeah. Well, you need to go in there and go do your research, because if you look at Ari Gold, that's what he is. But then if you look at Ari Gold only had love for one client, and what's that client?
I didn't watch that.
You didn't watch the show because you're a foul. I
know what it is.
Huh? Okay, and now exactly. That's what Violator was for Chris Lighty. He had all these other goals, but every artist that was signed to him was Vinny Chase. Was his favorite artist. It was Vinny Chase. That's crazy. So listen what I said. You gotta. The artist of his was his favorite artist. So listen, because he made everybody feel like they was the most important. So that's the reason why I broke it down like that. I could have said, I'm Vinny Chase. I could have said 50 Cent was Vinny Chase. I could have said Missy Elliott was Vinny Chase. But that's not what it was. He treated every other business like how he had, like the football. Remember Ari Gold? He wanted football. He wanted to invest in restaurants. He wanted to, fuck his wife better. He wanted to do whatever. But that's the reason why Entourage is invented, because Ari Chase loved Vincent Chase. Ari Gold, loved Vincent Chase. So that's what Chris Lighty was to Violator.